All right. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining me on another episode on this channel. I know I have a pretty different look going on right now. I'm actually rocking my Ray-Ban aviators requested by Justin Proper on a live stream. He wanted me to try to rock them once again. And so here it is for you. I know I'm wearing a shave head and I look a little different, but hey, I think it looks pretty cool. So let's jump into the main topic here today. We're going to be talking about the most famous podcast host in the world, Mr. Joe Rogan. Now, we know that the powerful Joe Rogan Experience is the best and number one podcast on the planet. I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan, and he's one of the main reasons why I actually use his Shure SM7B microphone, because he uses it and he uses the same Sennheiser headphones that I use also as well. But Joe Rogan has gotten himself into a bit of hot water with some of his listeners. Now, if you have been watching his podcast lately, you'll notice that he actually still has guests in studio. They're not remote. And you're probably thinking, all right, aren't we supposed to be social distancing? So shouldn't he actually have his guests, come on the podcast from their home? Not the case. And I was wondering that myself until I woke up this morning and actually found out the reason why his guests are still able to come into the studio. It's because Joe Rogan is pulling out all the stops to make sure his guests do not spread the virus in his studio and him. So Joe Rogan has been testing himself like crazy, and he's requiring that all of his guests on his podcast to come in get tested also. Now, you may be thinking, all right, how is this even possible? I mean, we've been hearing about people actually not being able to get tests. How's Joe Rogan able to get all of these tests? Well, check this out. Joe Rogan said this, okay? He says, quote, "I got tested yesterday and I got tested 2 days before that. I'm going to get tested myself every 3 or 4 days. F it," Rogan said on his show. Now, Joe Rogan is actually paying Los Angeles doctor Abe Malkin to test the guests. That included Chris D'Elia and Brian Callen, who were actually guests on his podcast. Sorry, I had to take off the glasses because it went out of focus. So the autofocus went off. So anyway, but he says, Chris is negative. Yay. That's right. I got the test, D'Elia responded. Rogan then asked D'Elia, "Isn't that nice?" "You know why I got the test? Because I know Joe Rogan. Because I came here and he had a doctor." But not all of the people that listen to Joe Rogan's podcast are on board with Joe Rogan taking up all these tests. Now, from what I understand, Joe Rogan is actually paying for all of these tests for his guests, and it's $299 a pop. So the doctor that he has isn't affiliated with the CDC, from what we understand. And someone actually commented that, quote, "If you can't get a coronavirus test, it's because Joe Rogan is hoarding all of them bitches. Good Lord." Another person said, "I don't need to talk to Joe Rogan. I just want the coronavirus test." Another one says, "People like Joe Rogan bragging every day about how him and his friends are being tested daily is ridiculous. Joe Rogan has had multiple coronavirus tests with negative results. What the hell, man?" Well, I guess I can say this. I don't really like the look of Joe Rogan bragging about getting coronavirus tests all the time. I mean, that's pretty insane that he's actually getting tested 3 or 4 days a week and he's negative. Now, I get that he wants to test his guests all the time. I get that, but I know he wants to be completely safe and he's not going to stop his podcast. He puts out a podcast pretty much every single day. Each one is like 2-3 hours long, maybe even 5 hours. But Joe Rogan is spending his own money. He has the resources. I get that, but he really shouldn't have actually said that, I believe, on his podcast, that he's getting tested like 3 or 4 times a week. He's probably the most tested person when it comes to the coronavirus in the world. I mean, does he really need that many tests? No, I don't think he really does. And he actually, may want to do more, have more guests come on remotely. I mean, Dan Crenshaw was on his podcast, I think last week or the week before. Dan Crenshaw was not in the studio. He was in his home in Texas. That would have worked fine. But I know you want to have the continuity and the interacting with people in person to create the podcast, because the Dan Crenshaw, when he was actually on the podcast, it wasn't really the best audio quality. I get that. And podcasts are best when you have guests in studio, if you ask me. But I don't think this is Joe Rogan's best look. But I don't think that he feels sorry for doing this. It seems like he's taking care of, number one, he's taking care of himself. He wants to make sure that he doesn't infect himself or his family, but yet he wants business to continue as normal. And I get that. But when people are out there getting tested, even if they can get a test, some people can't even get a test. I was reading about some locations out here in Houston, they can only do 200 tests a day. And we all know that those lines are much longer. So a lot of people can't even get a test. And Joe Rogan is getting tested 3 or 4 days a week. He's making sure that all of his guests are getting a test as well. So not Joe Rogan's best look, but the man has the means. He's spending his money, but also he has an independent doctor that's not affiliated with the CDC. But what do you guys think of this? Is Joe Rogan bragging about him getting coronavirus tests 3 or 4 days a week? Is this a good look for him? Do you agree with him getting tested that much? I think that's overkill. It's overkill if you ask me. Now, he has guests on the show every day, so I don't know how that's going to work, but it's not Joe Rogan's best look to me. So guys, let me know what you think about all this in the comments. If you're new here to the channel, please hit subscribe to catch future videos from me, and we will catch you on the next video. John Matrixx, out.